Our system of constantly rising tariffs has at last reacted against us to the point of closing our Canadian frontier on the north. Our European markets on the east, many of our Latin American markets to the south. And a goodly proportion of our Pacific markets on the west, through the retaliatory tariffs of those countries. It has forced many of our great industrial institutions who exported their surplus production to such countries to establish plants in such countries within the tariff walls. This has resulted in the reduction of the operation of their American plants. An opportunity for employment. Just as freedom to farm has ceased, so also the opportunity in business has narrowed. It still is true that men can start small enterprises, trusting to native shrewdness and ability to keep abreast of competitors. But area after area has been preempted altogether by the great corporations. And even in the fields which still have no great concerns, the small man starts with a handicap. The unfeeling statistics of the past 3 decades show that the independent businessman is running a losing race. Perhaps he is forced to the wall. Perhaps he cannot command credit. Perhaps he is squeezed out, in Mr. Wilson's words, by highly organized corporate competitors, as your corner grocery man can tell you. Recently a careful study was made of the concentration of business in the United States. It showed that our economic life was dominated by some 600odd corporations who controlled 2/3 of American industry. 10 million small businessmen divided the other third. More striking still, it appeared that if the process of concentration goes on at the same rate, at the end of another century we shall have all American industry controlled by a dozen corporations, and run by perhaps 100 men. Put plainly, we are steering a steady course toward economic oligarchy, if we are not there already. Clearly, all this calls for a reappraisal of values. A mere builder of more industrial plants, a creator of more railroad systems. An organizer of more corporations, is as likely to be a danger as a help. The day of the great promoter or the financial titan. To whom we granted anything if only he would build, or develop, is over. Our task now is not discovery or exploitation of natural resources, or necessarily producing more goods. It is the soberer, less dramatic business of administering resources and plants already in hand. Of seeking to re-establish foreign markets for our surplus production, of meeting the problem of underconsumption. Of adjusting production to consumption, of distributing wealth and products more equitably. Of adapting existing economic organizations to the service of the people. The day of enlightened administration has come. Just as in older times the central government was first a haven of refuge, and then a threat. So now in a closer economic system the central and ambitious financial unit is no longer a servant of national desire, but a danger. I would draw the parallel one step farther. We did not think because national government had become a threat in the 18th century that therefore we should abandon the principle of national government. Nor today should we abandon the principle of strong economic units called corporations. Merely because their power is susceptible of easy abuse. In other times we dealt with the problem of an unduly ambitious central government by modifying it gradually into a constitutional democratic government. So today we are modifying and controlling our economic units. As I see it, the task of government in its relation to business is to assist the development of an economic declaration of rights, an economic constitutional order. This is the common task of statesman and businessman. It is the minimum requirement of a more permanently safe order of things. Every man has a right to life. And this means that he has also a right to make a comfortable living. He may by sloth or crime decline to exercise that right. But it may not be denied him. We have no actual famine or death. Our industrial and agricultural mechanism can produce enough. And to spare. Our government formal and informal, political and economic. Owes to everyone an avenue to possess himself of a portion of that plenty sufficient for his needs, through his own work. Every man has a right to his own property. Which means a right to be assured. To the fullest extent attainable, in the safety of his savings. By no other means can men carry the burdens of those parts of life which, in the nature of things afford no chance of labor. Childhood, sickness, old age. In all thought of property, this right is paramount. All other property rights must yield to it. If, in accord with this principle, we must restrict the operations of the speculator, the manipulator. Even the financier, I believe we must accept the restriction as needful, not to hamper individualism but to protect it. These two requirements must be satisfied, in the main, by the individuals who claim and hold control of. The great industrial and financial combinations which dominate so large a part of our industrial life. They have undertaken to be, not businessmen, but princes of property. I am not prepared to say that the system which produces them is wrong. I am very clear that they must fearlessly and competently assume the responsibility which goes with the power. So many enlightened businessmen know this that the statement would be little more than a platitude. Were it not for an added implication. This implication is, briefly, that the responsible heads of finance and industry, instead of acting each for himself, must work together to achieve the common end. They must, where necessary, sacrifice this or that private advantage. And in reciprocal self-denial must seek a general advantage. It is here that formal government, political government, if you choose, comes in. Whenever in the pursuit of this objective the lone wolf, the unethical competitor, the reckless promoter, the Ishmael or Insul whose hand is against every man's, declines to join in achieving an end recognized as being for the public welfare. And threatens to drag the industry back to a state of anarchy, the government may properly be asked to apply restraint. Likewise, should the group ever use its collective power contrary to public welfare, the government must be swift to enter and protect the public interest. The government should assume the function of economic regulation only as a last resort. To be tried only when private initiative, inspired by high responsibility. With such assistance and balance as government can give, has finally failed. As yet there has been no final failure. Because there has been no attempt, and I decline to assume that this nation is unable to meet the situation. The final term of the high contract was for liberty and the pursuit of happiness. We have learned a great deal of both in the past century. We know that individual liberty and individual happiness mean nothing unless both are ordered in the sense that one man's meat is not another man's poison. We know that the old rights of personal competency, the right to read, to think, to speak, to choose and live a mode of life, must be respected at all hazards. We know that liberty to do anything which deprives others of those elemental rights is outside the protection of any compact, and that government in this regard is the maintenance of a balance. Within which every individual may have a place if he will take it, in which every individual may find safety if he wishes it, in which every individual may attain such power as his ability permits, consistent with his assuming the accompanying responsibility. Faith in America, faith in our tradition of personal responsibility, faith in our institutions. Faith in ourselves demands that we recognize the new terms of the old social contract. We shall fulfill them, as we fulfilled the obligation of the apparent utopia which Jefferson imagined for us in 1776, and which Jefferson, Roosevelt, and Wilson sought to bring to realization. We must do so, lest a rising tide of misery engendered by our common failure, engulf us all. But failure is not an American habit. And in the strength of great hope we must all shoulder our common load. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The Banking Crisis, First Fireside Chat. Delivered March 12, 1933, Washington, D. C. My friends. I want to talk for a few minutes with the people of the United States about banking to talk. With the comparatively few who understand the mechanics of banking. But more particularly with the overwhelming majority of you who use banks for the making of deposits and the drawing of checks. I want to tell you what has been done in the last few days. And why it was done, and what the next steps are going to be. I recognize that the many proclamations from state capitals and from Washington, the legislation, the Treasury regulations, and so forth, couched for the most part in banking and legal terms. Ought to be explained for the benefit of the average citizen. I owe this, in particular, because of the fortitude and the good temper with which everybody